Cool. Okay. So, first of all, really short little intro to both of us, and definitely going to be the least interesting thing about it. So I'm Adam, I'm a personal trainer, I'm a massive golf geek, been playing since I was a proper little nipper, and I've just recently come back to it after taking a bit of time away from it, mainly just due to frustration at my poor game. I coach some players on the Challenge and Euro Pro Tour, and yeah, essentially I just wanted to really get as many people kind of to see the benefits of resistance training when it comes to improving their golf game, because most golfers have been missing out on the benefits of kind of proper strength training programs due to many of the kind of the myths and misconceptions around weight training. And, even watching the kind of PGA champs today, you'll have heard a lot, especially when they're talking about people like Brooks and stuff like that, about, Bryson, about how they might end up injured one day from the resistance training that they're doing, and this is kind of now is a good time to help kind of dispel some of these myths and give you a bit of a better idea on things.
Hey guys, I'm Harry. I am a PGA golf coach and I teach at Chichester Golf Club. I've been teaching there for about 12 years. I would say my speciality over the last sort of 10 or 11 years has pretty much been more iron play and wedges. And then probably about 2 years ago, myself and Adam and a couple of the other guys started playing each week. And we just basically started trying to hit it as far as we could and trying to get it past each other. So from that, I sort of began to think that actually I didn't perhaps understand about how to hit the ball far as much as what I thought I did. So the last year I've sort of been delving into a little bit more about how you can increase speed, not just in elite professionals, also in like amateurs. A lot of people that I coach might be anyone from a 14-year-old that perhaps has just begun, or an 86-year-old that has been playing for their whole life. They just want to create more speed and try and I try and implement a few of these things that we've learned over the last year into their game to try and help them hit it a little bit further. So what I'm going to do first is, I think I've just taken over the screen there.
Yeah.
What I'm going to do first is just go through a couple of the drills that I would like to use, and some of the things that I've taken away from trying to hit it as far as I can. And I've chosen like the 3 best drills that I feel would be most relevant to anyone that just walks onto the driving range. So before we do that, I'm just going to pop this up on the screen here. So this is the current long well drive champion, Carl Berkshire.
Oh, anything coming through yet, mate?
Have you got that
there? No, it's not coming through yet. Are you on the right?
Yeah. Can you see anything?
No, just says Harry Potter.
Wait there, 2 seconds. There we go.
Is that coming through? Let's have a look.
Is that it? Can you see me?
No, I can see you. There you go. Now you're screen sharing, mate.
Fantastic. Good. Right. Okay. So one of the things that we're going to go through first, so I wanted to go through first, is just look at a couple of things that this guy here is the current long well drive champion. Some of the things that he does in his game and how I wanted to build that into my game, but on a normal level, because I can't hit it 423 yards. So one of the things that I was looking at is how he starts to build a little bit more momentum. Now, I remember when I first started coaching, one of the things that I would be taught to do was I would try and teach people to start with their weight on their right side. Whereas actually, if you look at this guy here, he's starting to build a little bit more momentum. So he's getting his weight onto the right, onto his left side, then back onto his right. And he does this a couple of times before he hits his shot. Once he starts to take the club away, all his pressure works onto his right side. He's then getting that club working up, and he's going to get taller as he takes the club back, and he's going to get his chest working up a little bit more and his hands work up and around his body. From here, we see that pressure plants into that left foot. So we have pressure down into the left side, but his center of mass in his body, and an easy way to think about it is his head actually stays behind the ball as he hits it. And it's basically him trying to create as much space as he can between this left foot and his hands up the top here to be able to try and create as much pressure as he can into the ground and then back up off the ground as he hits it. And you can see actually, I would say most amateurs that I teach, or most people that I teach would tend to move this way because they feel like as they hit it, they're They're going to work towards the target, and that's how they'll create speed. So anyway, so we've got building a bit of momentum, getting those hands nice and high as he takes the club back. And then from there, getting a little bit of speed from this first movement on the way down. So we'll just jump straight on. This software is called Coach Now. This is what I use when I'm teaching. So I've just popped a few of the videos on here just for ease, because I can draw on them as well. And this first one is building momentum. So it's just going to help you to try and get that club working fast to the top of your backswing. So first I start with my weight on my right, and then I move it back onto my left. Sorry, onto my left and then through to my right. And I just do this a couple of times before I start to take the club back. So I'm going to start with my pressure on my left, and then I'm going to work that club back to the top of my swing. And I can do that on the golf course just to try and feel like I'm going to get that pressure working back as I take the club away. So as I take it away, I want that pressure working onto the right side, but I can do that on the driving range as well. And then from there, I would want that pressure working back down without me feeling like I'm going to move too much towards the ball. So building momentum is the first thing that I would try and get you to do. It builds a bit of speed in the takeaway, creates a bit more speed on the way down, helps with a bit of weight transfer. And yeah, I would say that was my number one drill to start with. My second drill would be something that I would perhaps call the rise and land. So the feeling is that as we take the club away, our hands work away wide, our chest starts to work up as we get the club to the top of the backswing, and our hands get nice and high. And we can see here, the feeling is that we want our head to feel like it's going to move up as we take the club away. And then as we work down, our pressure works into our left foot without moving closer to my target. So I'm going to rise up, hands high, chest high, and I'm going to push down into my left side. And that's creating that feeling of trying to get onto my left side, use a bit more leverage. And also, I want to try and make sure as I'm doing it, I'm keeping my center of mass backwards. So
Harry, do you think that that kind of heel rising thing is why you're seeing a lot of tour pros and stuff do that now?
Yeah. So you look at someone like Bryson.
Definitely noticeable. Like even with Bryson, noticing obviously his left foot coming off the ground a lot now. Yeah.
I think I've got a good picture of that on here. Basically, as you get Bryson taking it to the top of his swing, you see this first move here as he works it up to the top. And as he's getting to the top, you can see this heel slowly starting to work off the ground, top of his backswing, and his heel is pretty much on the ground. Again, when I first started teaching, I was sort of taught keep that left foot down on the ground. And again, with one of these swing speed training aids that we've been using, you can see as I'm getting to the top of the swing here, I'm getting this pressure working onto my right side here. So this is my right foot here. Hands up nice and high, and that first move is that push down onto that left side. So it's basically trying to create height to be able to then push down, to be able to then push back up as I want to come into impact and create the speed again. And then once I'm pushing back up, I can let that club work back round my body. Third drill is just trying to create a little bit more speed from the top of the swing. So the feeling that I like is as we take the club to the top, so still incorporating that feel of momentum moving back. So my pressure works onto my right, hands work wide, chest works up, hands work high. And then from here, I'm going to feel like my grip is on my club, but it's loose. And I'm going to feel like I'm going to pull the grip off the end of the club. And it's that first little move here, which is going to create width. It's going to create speed. It's going to create force in the hands early. And it feels like from there, I can pull that club back down and around me. So I don't feel like and then I can keep that club working down and around me and keep that pressure and speed working around my body. So I would get that club to work, pull that down, and then from there working back down and around towards the ball. So just get that club to the top and a few little pulls down as fast as we can.
Okay, so you've done that so I can see that you've basically done that a few times first before eventually doing a swing. Is that right?
So this is my drill, up to the top.
Yeah.
Didn't explain that very well. Up to the top, pull down quick, and then start again. Pull down quick. And it's creating width. And it's sort of a little bit different to the old sort of drill that we might have heard of, pulling that butt of the club down towards the ball. We don't want that. We want the club and hands to be working wide and back round, to get that club working back round behind us at speed, as opposed to pulling it down and losing width, if that makes sense.
That's where that big right miss comes, yeah?
Yeah, absolutely. Now, these drills are really good for the driving range. So, but one thing I would say is, if you're going to try and take it onto the golf course, it's quite hard. So I find that most tour pros, so say if they, I had a good story a couple of years ago. I went to Wentworth and I was talking to a coach, and he coaches Bernd Wiesberger. And one of the things that he was looking at is club head speed, and how it related to when he was on the golf course compared to on the driving range. So when he was on the driving range, his club head speed was, say, I don't know, 125 miles or 100, whatever, 28 miles an hour or 25 miles an hour. And once he got onto the golf course, it slowed down significantly. So it was actually on average about 4 or 5 miles an hour less. Now, I know we've probably all been on the TrackMan on the driving range, and you can stand there and hit it as hard as you can. And you get onto the golf course and you wonder why you're perhaps losing 10 or even 20, 30 yards sometimes. And a lot of that is just down to commitment to the shot. So when we're on the driving range, we can hit the ball as hard as we want. It can go anywhere. Whereas when we're on the golf course, we need to try and pick a specific target. And I always try and use a routine to help with this. So on the course, I would pick a target before I hit my shot. It might be the flag, it might be a tree in the distance. And then after that, I would fill my shot. So if it was a long drive and I was trying to hit it as hard as I could, I would try and swing as fast as I could at that target. And then as I came up, I would try and feel like I could visualize that shot as I come through and finish my swing off. And then from there, I feel like I've put myself in the best possible position to be able to execute the shot. So, and I would relate that to all shots, not just driving. So trying to have a routine puts you in the best mind frame, and it gives you the best possible opportunity to be able to commit to the shot without backing out of it. So I'm sure we've all hit drives before where we stand on the tee, don't quite commit to it, back out of it, and we either have that low left hook or the high cut or something that we don't quite like. Whereas actually, quite often when we're stood there and we're playing with on our own, more often than not, when there's nothing on the line, we'll stand there and just hit it hard off the tee. That's when under no pressure. And the on-course routine is designed to try and take the pressure off the shot. So, I mean, that's probably my top 3 tips. But I would say that the on-course routine at the end, I would say that was probably as good as any tip that I've got to try and get you to hit it further technically, to be able to then take that onto the golf course as well. So, yeah, brilliant. So over to you, Adam. You can talk a little bit more about the strength side. Yeah. If any questions at the end, guys, then we'll have a little bit of a time at the end where you can fire some questions over. Hopefully I've explained that as well as I can, but any questions at the end, more than welcome to ask.
I was going to say, if you've got any questions as we go through this, just chuck them in the chat box, and then we'll get through to through all of them at the end. And that way you don't have to kind of wait or anything like that. So while they're fresh in your mind, just, get them in there. Cool. Cheers, Harry. Thanks for that, mate. So I'm going to go into the strength training side of things. And I'm going to start off with some myths and misconceptions around kind of golf and resistance training and strength training, and just in general what kind of people feel about golfers and stuff like that. And like one of the first ones is people will say golfers aren't athletes, so you don't need to train in a specific way. You shouldn't be training like other sports, because the reality is it's not intensive. It's just a little walk and a little stroll around. I absolutely love this photo of John Daly because it kind of epitomizes the man and epitomizes why so many of us absolutely love him. And essentially I just want to kind of show this because John Daly's led the tour driving distance average most of the seasons that he was on the PGA Tour. Even into his later years, he was still averaging it. And in terms of percentage wise of how far ahead he was away, in front of the tour average, even ahead of where Bryson is currently, he was actually in terms of percentage, further in front of people. But, this golfers aren't athletes thing, whilst he might not look like he's, especially in the later stages, he might not have looked like he was much of an athlete. The reality is the physical qualities he had there were incredibly special, something that not many people possess. And it was, physicality which helped him hit the ball the distance he did. So I love this video. I was just going to play this video quick from, I think it was the match, the WGC. Hopefully you can all see it well enough. It's a little bit grainy. Didn't quite realise how low resolution TV was back in these days. So you can see the absolute speed he has through the ball, how much rotational speed he has. And there he goes, sticking it 15 yards past Tiger in his prime days, in his absolute physical peak days. So I just wanted to kind of start with that one there. I love that, find that really, really interesting. So number 2, myths and misconceptions, is you'll get injured. So I already heard this about 5 times on the PGA Champs broadcast today, and Tiger, Brooks, all of these people are being put up, put forward as examples of, the problem is, with strength training is that you're going to get injured, you're going to get these issues with your back and your issues with your knee. And the reality is, most of this stuff has come down to a combination of overuse injuries and training in a way that has been overly excessive for what the needs of the sport are. So, if you've ever listened to the Tiger Woods audiobook, which is amazing, and I'd definitely recommend listening to that, it talks about the way he was training and doing kind of 3-hour long, training sessions, training with Navy SEALs. And the reality is that he was an accident waiting to happen. Now, it wasn't resistance training that was causing the issue. It was the sheer volume of work that he was doing, and hitting loads and loads of golf balls, obviously rotating into that left knee, rotating through his back, extremely forcefully, but then also piling on loads and loads of extra work he didn't need to be doing. So this is where resistance training, needs to be done at the right amounts, at the right volumes, and with the right intensities, and then that is a benefit to somebody's life rather than becoming an issue. Too much muscle will make you slow and immobile. So you hear about it where people are like, no, you get bulky, you'll get slow, you'll get inflexible. And this guy here is a great example. Jason Zuback, was like the world's longest driver for a long period of time. He trained predominantly like a bodybuilder. He didn't really do much in the way of anything other than just training to get as big and as jacked as possible. And it's a real misconception that getting bigger is going to lead to reduced mobility. When people cite this, they think about the biggest bodybuilders in the world, like athletes on the kind of Olympia stage, and these individuals are not normal. They're not operating in the same field we are, due to obviously steroids and stuff like that. And the realities are their mobility issues are not coming down to the fact that they're training in a that they've gained some muscle. It's because they've got so big, they've got muscle getting in the way of things, and that's not the case for anyone who's going into the gym to try and build some muscle to help them hit the ball longer. And then finally, strength training for golf should be functional. So I don't know if you've ever seen this. I think this was the front cover of like a Golf Digest magazine, and it's Dustin Johnson swinging on a Swiss ball. Now, whether this is something that he actually did, or whether this is just part of something they asked him to do as just part of the photo shoot, and he's never done this before in his life. I've heard and seen golfers at different levels of highest levels of amateur sport and of amateur golf, and also in the professional ranks, thinking that this is something that is kind of testament to the type of training that needs to be done. And golf training in the past has been very much about making your training look like a golf swing, when actually that is certainly not the way we want to be going with our strength training. It's been for too long, it's kind of been physiotherapy bastardized and taken into the golf realm, because that's all really golfers knew. As they'd work with physios who'd given them some exercises, and then that was essentially just taken into the gym and paired with a lot of work that looked like golf swings.
Sorry to interrupt, Adam. I remember when I first started going to the county coaching when I was sort of like 16, 17, 18, and we all had screenings, and if we couldn't our right hand couldn't touch our left hand behind our back, that meant that we were that was really bad. And if we couldn't touch our toes, that also meant it was bad. And every exercise that we did and we got given was all completely body weight or just with a golf club.
Yeah.
And that was even up to the age of sort of like 18, 19 as well, where we were obviously more than capable of going in the gym and doing stuff. But that was everything that we were given.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's it. I mean, it's the same thing for guys I know who are in the England setup. It's exactly what they were sort of told to do. So this is from a guy called the Golf Physiologist on Instagram. And it's absolutely brilliant. I'd really recommend you follow him if you're interested in kind of the strength training and the golf side of things, how those things merge together. So great quote. The goal in the gym is not to use exercises that perfectly resemble the golf swing. You won't ever get more specific than golf practice. Instead, the goal is to target adaptations that increase your performance potential and resilience to the stress of the swing. This is best accomplished by selecting exercises that can be done safely and effectively by the individual golfer, and that will improve physical attributes that are relevant to the golf swing, e.g. have the best chance of having training adaptations transfer to improved golf performance. So doing loads and loads of, swinging style movements in the gym, save that for the range. That's where you practice your swing. That's where you take the drills that Harry's just said and increase your speed in that respect. Now, obviously, he's mentioned there kind of the physical attributes that are relevant to the golf swing. So what are they? So this was from a paper by him, and they essentially looked at everything that had been done in relation to resistance training and essentially increasing speed in the golf swing. And they basically pull it all together and see what happens, see what the averages are. What seemed to have the biggest impact? Upper body power and explosiveness, lower body power and explosiveness, upper body strength, and lower body strength. So as you can see, lower body strength and upper body power and explosiveness seem to be the two biggest things that correlated there. Now, we can't just take it as being that's the sole things and the only things, but it was certainly the trend showed that these were the most important things. And what's really interesting is that long drivers are able to produce almost about 90% of the speed that they'll be able to produce just from their knees. And that's due to the fact that upper body power and explosiveness is so high in these individuals as well. And if you go all the way to the left, you'll see that flexibility is trivial. It's minor. An individual improving their flexibility seems to have no correlation to helping improve their clubhead speed. And I actually think golfers are too often spending too much time focusing on flexibility and not enough time focusing on actually heavy resistance work with big intent. So all of that being said, I'm just going to take you through, a couple more actually in terms of individual exercises, what they found correlated quite well. Now, I'm going to kind of caveat a few of these things here. So squat 1 rep max. I am not saying that any individual needs to be going in straight away from this and start doing squat 1 rep maxes. It's unnecessary, but what that is telling you is that individuals with that kind of squat style of pattern, which could be done with a leg press or a hack squat or all these different exercises, their strength has big correlation. So improving your strength in movements that resemble that is going to be an important factor. And it doesn't have to be 1 rep maxes. It could certainly be 3 or 5 rep maxes or anything like that, something that's a little bit safer. Rotation medicine ball throws, seated medicine ball throws. Sorry if you can hear my daughter crying in the background. And then jump power and jump height. These things will have kind of the biggest correlation. And then if we move back a little bit, you can see body mass there has a big, starts to have quite a decent sized correlation with hitting the ball further, which is why you've seen, Bryson and Tiger and all these individuals in the past actively try and add muscle mass on and see, improvements because of it. So this is what I'm calling the swing speed training step ladder. Okay, so I just want to take you through. So, no matter what position you're kind of starting from, I want to help you figure out kind of where you go from there. And I'm not going to be kind of giving you like, exact programs or anything like that, because it will be a little bit different for every individual. But I just want to give you an idea about, if you've never stepped in the gym before, or you are well versed in training and you've gained a lot of muscle and you just don't know where to go from there in order to top out your speed. So we're going to start with movement ownership. So movement ownership, this is getting on the step ladder. This is basically owning all of the different movements that you're going to be doing as part of your exercises in your training program. A lot of people jump far too far up the ladder before they've actually really been able to use their muscles properly in movements. Many of us are just using kind of momentum, bouncing up and down, not really using our muscles. And so we need to make sure that we're owning these movements first and foremost. So when I sat, so you can see I've got squat or level change. Now, the reason I'm calling it squat or level change is because You don't have to squat. If you find squats uncomfortable, if they don't seem to fit, your frame, if you're quite tall and you notice that you just don't feel very good when you're doing things like back squats or front squats, then you can certainly do things instead, like leg presses, leg extensions, hack squats. All we're trying to do with these exercises here is we're trying to target these muscles that come across the front of the knee, so our quads, those thigh muscles there, and get them stronger. Hip hinging movements, so all of the muscles that essentially take you from kind of being in a bent over position into a straight position, so kind of our glutes and our hamstrings. So variations of squat and deadlift are going to do this. Hyper extensions on a bench where we're kind of leaning forward and then bringing the body up nice and controlled. And then also things like hip thrusts, barbell hip thrusts, single leg hip thrusts, all those type of movements. And then upper body pressing movements, as I've spoken about, kind of if we went back a couple and we saw kind of what things kind of correlated, we'd have seen that like seated medicine ball throws and stuff like that had good correlation. And that's going to be a lot in the way of our muscles, our big chest muscles, front of the shoulder and things like that. And so upper body kind of pushing style movements are also going to be something that really important to get stronger at. And as I mentioned, kind of build ownership of these movements. And then everything else as well. You're still going to want to target everything relatively balanced, just like you're going to, train some pushing movements. You also want to train some pulling movements, some rowing movements, things like some kind of lat pull downs or pull ups, if that's kind of, in your strength range. It's going to be really important to make these a priority within your training program. And then in terms of when I say movement ownership, what do I mean? I just mean at any point within performing one of your sets and performing one of your reps, you should be able to pause for a picture. That's how you know you own a movement pattern. If you could start going down to a certain point and you could pause at any time and hold a good position in that, that's how you know that you've really kind of cracked it when it comes to that side of things. So let's say you managed to get that movement ownership. It might have taken a little while, but now you're really owning all the movements. You've seen already some strength and some size gains. Where do we go from there? Muscular development. Okay, so increasing the size of your stepladder's base of support. So what I mean by this is if you've got a wider stepladder, you can go further up it. You're going to go and get higher. And if we think about that peak as being your top club head speed, your maximum club head speed, the bigger your base of support, the higher you're going to be able to take that up. And this is why individuals, like Bryson, have been really targeting gaining muscle mass as much as they can before they've started doing loads and loads and loads of speed work. So where are you at currently? Are you brand new to the gym? Have you kind of gained much in the way of muscle mass yet? Or are you already, relatively kind of far down the road in terms of you've gained quite a lot already? And then, we can obviously start moving forward. But how can you do this? How can you look to try and build muscle in the gym? And reality is it's relatively simple in that we want to kind of train like a bodybuilder. Now, I've said sort of because there are a lot of bodybuilders that do a lot of stupid shit. And so I don't mean that you need to be kind of going away and eating, chicken and broccoli from Tupperware containers, and that you need to be doing, 40 sets on every exercise or on every kind of muscle group or anything like that. But what we want to do is we want to be training sufficiently hard enough to see some muscle growth. So we want to train with all our sets being relatively close to failure, anywhere within kind of 0 to 3 reps within failure. Okay, so let's say I could do, I'm doing a squat movement or a squat pattern. Oh, I just realized my Mac is just about to run out of battery, so I might have to get Harry to take over quickly. Let's hope it gets all the way there. So I want to be getting quite close to failure. So within 3 reps of failure, 3 to 5 days per week. So I want to make sure that kind of whatever volume of training I'm doing is split between 3 to 5 days per week, which means if I'm doing 3 days, I could do 3 total body days. If I'm doing 4 days, I could do, I could split it into 2 uppers and 2 lowers. Or if I'm doing 5 days, I could do a push, a pull, a lower, another lower, and then I could do a total body day. And then enough sets per week on body parts. So 10 plus sets on each body part over the course of the week is going to put us in a good starting position. Now, if you've never trained before, you could probably progress really well on actually less sets per week on each body part. But, 10 per week could be a good place to start, see how you progress. And if you're recovering well and not seeing muscle growth, then you can start looking to bring it up. Anywhere in a 6 to 20 rep range is going to be a great place to build muscle from. Nice, safe place for you to build muscle from, and not going to be overly taxing on the joints. And then intention and execution. You know how I spoke about movement ownership? This is where it really comes into fruition. So, making sure that you are executing exercises properly with great form is going to help you really put the tension on the muscle and actually see muscle growth because of it. Okay, peak strength. So increasing the height of your step ladder. So we already talked about the base. Now we're starting to build it up. So if you spent some times on steps 1 and 2, now we're going to look to try and build our strength with some, heavier, lower rep work. So we're looking at upper and lower pushing exercises. So ideally, we're probably keeping this 6 reps and below. Now, this doesn't mean I think you should take it to 1 rep maxes. I think anywhere between 3 to 6 reps for these phases would be worthwhile. And what you're looking for is on your biggest movements, you want to perform 15 to 25 reps in total across your sets. So for example, different ways you could do that is you could do, 4 sets of 4 would be 16 reps, 5 sets of 5 would be 25 reps. So it just gives you an idea about roughly how many sets you would do for how many reps you might do as part of that set. Anywhere between 1 to 3 reps in reserve, and explosive intention. Even though these are heavy and you're not going to move that fast, the idea is that you try to move as fast as you can. It's going to help really build that, that speed strength that we're going to look for. And then pick exercises that fit you. When it comes to this type of thing, you don't want to be performing heavy exercises that are uncomfortable for you, that don't feel good. So pick exercises that fit you. As I said, if you don't like squatting, leg pressing is absolutely fine to use as a different, one. Same thing with bench press. If you don't like bench pressing, you can use a chest press machine. It's just the movement pattern that we're looking for. Non-specific power and rate of force development. So this is how explosive you are. Okay, so we've talked about building strength. Now we're talking about being as explosive as we possibly can. And what I want to explain here, and what I'm trying to show with this kind of step ladder idea, is you don't have to be just massively strong. You don't have to be a power lifter to get the most out of this type of stuff. Essentially, it's how much of your maximum can you tap into in a short period of time. So we've got 2 examples. We've got that big, strong power lifter who's really strong but really slow. Okay, so his max might be 200 kilos, but he can only kind of get this far up in 0.25 seconds, which is essentially the average speed of a downswing. But then you've got this guy here, still strong, but a little bit smaller, maybe a little bit more, a little bit more whippier, and he can get almost to the top in that 0.25. He's going to be producing more force in the time it takes than this individual here who's a bit slower to get to his max. And that's really going to be the most important thing. So how fast can you climb? So these are some examples here of progressions that we could use. So we've got example of a squat and level change. We've got a hack squat. Then we could move that into a hack with a band. So we've got a resistance band there, which is essentially going to enable us to really aggressively kind of throw ourselves up as hard as we can within this movement without kind of worrying that, that anything's going to kind of jump off the shoulders or anything like that. And then we could move from that onto being able to do things like box jumps. And there's certainly some progressions that you want to do when it comes to box jumps. I think what I'm going to quickly do before I lose you all is I'm just going to quickly grab my charger. So I won't be a sec. Okay, so there we go. I don't have to rush through this now. So we went from kind of squat level change, went onto the band resisted hack squat, and then now you're going to move on to some exercises where the goal is to be less loaded, but to move as quick as possible. So box squat, great example of an exercise where you do this. Now with box squats and things like that, there needs to be a certain amount of progression towards these kind of movements. Now, what do I mean by that? It means that I wouldn't recommend anyone who's new to training or not ever tried this before kind of just go away and just start doing loads and loads of box jumps, because it is a skill that's required. We do need to learn how to land properly. So something to do before you start adding things like box squats in, if you're at this kind of level on the step ladder, is just to learn how to drop down off of boxes and land and be able to absorb force into the ground without kind of angles giving way or anything like that. You can progress onto gradually landing from slightly higher boxes and just absorbing that force. And when you feel like you've really kind of mastered that and built up that tolerance for doing that and not getting kind of twinges in your ankles or anything like that, then you can start moving on to doing things like explosive box jumps after doing, sets of, 3 to 6 reps of really explosive kind of heavier movements. The combination of those two things together as like a little superset is a brilliant way of helping build this kind of, rate of force development, this explosive power that we'll be looking for, that's going to help with those drills that Harry's talked about, which is all about kind of creating pressure through the ground. Now, when it comes to things like box jumps, the idea isn't to just get the highest box, okay? The reason the box is there is so that you don't land from as quite a height, okay? So you're trying to jump as high as you can, but then you're just landing on something that's not quite as low as the floor. That's the whole reason for a box jump. So don't go in trying to find the biggest box that that you just about clear your feet at, because it's kind of a recipe for disaster. Same thing with upper body pushes is, you're going to own the movement that's, to the far left first of all. So movement ownership, things like press ups can be just as useful as you're doing things like a bench press. Then we come into a more explosive version of it. So this is doing it from like a bit of an incline position on a bench, and you're trying to throw yourself away from the bench and then kind of absorb that force again. So you're learning how to move fast against a decent resistance. And then we come into our light movement, where we're trying to be as explosive as possible, move as quick as we can. And this is that kind of med ball throw that they performed from a seated position. They showed had real good carryover to your swing speed. And then finally, anti-rotation into rotation movement. So golf is still obviously a rotational sport. And our core is essentially what's going to take all of that pressure and all of that strength that we've got through the ground. It's going to transfer it into the upper body and then allow us to use our strength and our power that we've created with our upper body pushing movements. And basically, it's kind of like dialing up the speed as we come further up the chain, eventually into the hands, eventually into the club head. So start off with anti-rotation work, first of all. Learn how to essentially hold something that's trying to pull you that way. Learn how to hold that position for some time. So the example that's down there, that guy's got a band and he's just holding what's called a pail-off press. He's just holding in position. He's really getting stronger through here. There's other movements that you could do that would help you do this. You could go in and do like a plank with like a very slow kind of tap on the shoulder where you're resisting rotation again. Then once you've kind of got that, you can start coming into movements where you actually do rotate with some resistance. This example here, it's just a cable kind of twist from a seated position. And then once you've started, get stronger with movements like that, we can start bringing it into much more explosive movements. We can use things like medicine balls, and we can do those rotational throws that also correlated to seeing higher club head speed. So how do I program for this? Upper and lower pushing exercises. You want to be less than 5 reps. With the movements that are weighted, so not obviously the jumps or the medicine ball stuff, you want to be in about 50 to 80% of your 1 rep max. Now, obviously, you don't have to know your 1 rep max. If you know how much weight you can do 5 reps for, you can go away, you can plug that into a 1 rep max calculator on the internet, and taking 50 to 80% of that 1 rep max. Now, what you're going to look to do is you're just going to look to move as fast as you can with that weight. You're going to leave more than 3 reps in the tank. We're not taking this to failure. If you notice you're starting to slow down, you've done too many reps. The idea is that every rep moves fast, and you progressively just get faster at using, the same weight or more weight. And then finally, top of our step ladder, and I appreciate if you managed to stick with me for this length of time, this is specific power and rate of force development. And this is speed swinging. This is all the stuff that now you're seeing Bryson do on the range. Bryson built that initial base of getting bigger, getting stronger, and now he's starting to take advantage of that by adding in this stuff that's right at the top. And it's, as I mentioned, it's specific. It's raising your club head speed maximum. Okay, so an example of what I mean by raising your club head speed maximum is if you can swing a golf club at 130 mile an hour. If I'm using like somebody who's quite quick as an example, if they've gone from their maximum 100% being 130 mile an hour, and then done what Bryson's done and now made his 100% maximum 140 mile per hour, essentially his 80% swing has now become higher, okay, because his highest has increased because of that. And last slide I'm going to show you is essentially just, you may have seen it already. This was Bryson doing this at the Masters, and this was brilliant. I think this went pretty viral. He's basically just swinging as hard as he can. No real kind of worry about where the ball is going. He's literally just trying to raise his maximum so that his 80% swing will be as much higher than it was previously. So there we go. That's the exact reason why he's kind of going away doing that. Not just ego. It is literally there for a particular reason. Cool. So that is me all done. And I will stop the share. And there we go. How was that, Harry? Was that all good?
Awesome. Yeah. That bit when you were talking about Bryson at the end, I think quite often when we actually go out and play on a Thursday, we'll have a bit of a bash at the end and hit like 20 or 25 balls with our driver and see how hard we can hit it. And then for the last 5, just tone it down and hit it to that 80%. And I find that those last 5 drives are so much better when I've practiced hitting it faster. So one last thing that I would say is before, like when you you need to try and practice hitting it hard. So just what you've seen Bryson do there. Try not to just get out on the course and hit it as hard as you can. Go to the range, have a specific driving club speed session. So whatever driving range you're at, if you're local, obviously where I'm teaching at Chichester, they've got a TrackMan down there. And it's going to give you, I'm not sure if it does club speed and ball speed, but regardless if it's club and ball or just ball, it just gives you something to try and beat each time you're hitting your club. So have a bit of a session where you go through a warm-up, hit some wedges, hit some 7-irons, and then perhaps just hit 50 balls and try and see how far you can hit your driver. And especially before you go out, just try and get to full speed. Don't make sure before you go out you are warmed up enough to be able to hit your driver off the first tee. You haven't just got off the putting green, had a coffee and walked straight to the first tee and then try and hit it as hard as you can, pull the grip off the end of off the first tee, basically.
Sweet. So if anyone's got any questions, you can either chuck them in the chat box, or I think you should be able to unmute yourself if you want to just ask one there. Also as well, before I go, I meant to chuck this up actually. So this is essentially, if you want to contact us, either of us, to ask something a little bit more specific, or you want to ask Harry about lessons or me about coaching or anything like that, then essentially you can find us. So at Built by Brown PT is me on Facebook and Instagram. That's my email address. At Harry P Golf is obviously Harry's. That's his email address as well. And we've also got the Clubhouse Podcast we've just released as well. So we're going on the podcast game, trying to get that done weekly. So if anyone's listened to it, let us know how you found it so far as well.